actually a winery in California, Davis Bynum, was making mead at the time, and he went out to visit them. He took a sabbatical leave from Indiana University, where he was a law professor, and went out to teach law at Davis for a year, and he just poking around and met these guys, and they were making mead, and that's kind of where it got started. And they've long since been out of the mead business, and they got sort of a fine wine Napa Valley kind of reputation now. But yeah, that's where he found out about it, and came back to our fledgling winery back in the early '70s, and started making it. And it was kind of hit and miss. It was just for a person that's sort of schooled in making wines from grapes, mead making can be kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
If that's a fair characterization, but yeah, a little bit less predictable, and
it is different. It's definitely different. Where did you taste your first mead? Was this something your dad had made?
Oh yeah, for sure. I was a teenager, stealing a couple sips here and there, but probably, it was probably in college when I really thought, I'm gonna make a go of this winery that my dad's got, and he was encouraging me to. And there were batches of mead that we made that were not so hot. I mean, borderline undrinkable, and there were occasional ones that were just like stellar. And I always believe that you can kind of rise to the highest common denominator. If you made it once great, you can do it again. You can figure it out. What was it about that batch that was so special? And over the years, sort of just getting it dialed in. But that was kind of the great hope back then. If you've tasted a great mead, then it's possible to make a great mead. Okay, I mean that's kind of it's sort of on its face obvious. So there we go. And it was basically about honey sourcing, managing fermentation, which is a bit of a challenge. So that's basically what it's about for us. So orange blossom honey, fermented to dryness with an orange blossom add back at the end. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of how we make it.
Okay, so you're back sweetening then towards the end of that. I was wondering.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and that's it's not a unique trick, but it works really, really well for us. Do you just want me to get into just some of the fermentation issues? We can talk about that real quick.
Yeah, totally. We want to hear.
Yeah. So I yeast selection is probably the most important thing, and there's I know we talk about yeast in terms of two things. One is their contribution to flavors and aromas, which would be one issue to be concerned with yeast, and the other one I would just call broadly is fermentation kinetics, and that would be just how robust they are, what their nutrient requirements are, their tendency to go to dryness or get stuck early. And that's really, I think, in when you talk about mead, that's really where you need to focus on is a yeast will just get it done. A workhorse kind of a yeast.
Mm-hmm.
So Pre-de-Mousse and K1 are really, really good choices. We use K1.
Okay.
And then nutrient additions is critical. I mean, you're going to be right up there, really high on just your run-of-the-mill diammonium phosphate and more complex type nutrient additions, and they're pretty warm in the 80 degrees Fahrenheit. We talk a lot about sort of retaining volatile compounds in grape wines with cool fermentation. That's just kind of a dead end with meads. It's just challenging enough to get it to go at all, but much less at 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, where we may ferment Sauvignon Blanc or Riesling or something like that. So keeping it warm during fermentation is a big part of it. Just let it go to dryness, and we clarify with centrifuge. So a tool that a lot of people don't have, but is a pretty cool thing. And it's for what I look at it, it's kind of old school, but in a world where they got cross-flow and some other things that people are all fired up about, I find that cross-flow to be sort of intuitively a bad idea, just with the super high pressures and shear forces and all that are going on. It just seems to me to be a rather abusive tool to use in winemaking in general and in mead specifically. So,
The centrifuge
Yeah.
thing is interesting because I've heard that from a couple of people now. But I'm sorry, Hamish, you were starting to say something.
Do you know roughly what kind of RPM you run the centrifuge at?
One more time, please.
Do you know roughly what kind of RPM you run the centrifuge at?
Oh, I don't know. That's a really good question, but it's a Westphalia, a fairly large Westphalia unit, and it is, man, that's a really good question. I know that the G-forces are in the 10,000.
Okay.
And
that answers the question.
Yeah, they go around,
Yeah, so this thing, right. Yeah, that's a pretty bad place to be if you're you. It's like being transported to the surface of the Saturn for a second.
They're NASA used.
But but so this thing is it runs on a 22.5 horsepower 3-phase motor. It takes 8 minutes to get to full RPM. It's spooling up. It sounds like a jet sort of winding up, turbine engine. It sounds like you got a helicopter parked in your winery when this
is
is going.
Like a continuous flow or something? Or
continuous flow.
Yeah,
continuous flow. Yeah. I think most people are kind of in their head. They're thinking about a batch type centrifuge you might see in a lab, but you'd have to almost look on a Westphalia. If you went to Westphalia Centrifuge, like at their website, you could see how these things work on a continuous flow. But the product basically enters what they call a disc stack, which accelerates it. And then migrates up to the top. The disc stack is what accelerates the product to the RPM of the chamber that it's now in. Otherwise, it would just sit there. The chamber would flow around it. The disc stack is what actually kind of captures it and grabs it, and the debris accumulates on this conical stack of discs and migrates to the bottom. And I bet that's absolutely crystal clear in your mind how this thing works. But
yeah, I'm trying to visualize it.
Yeah, but
I have to go watch the videos.
Yeah, so the big users of like these food grade centrifuges, number one would be dairy industry. All right, those guys they don't want to sit there and wait for the cream to rise to the top. It might take like days. So a centrifuge is used to, because it's basically a density separator, right? Not a particle size separator, but a density separator. So the denser stuff comes out, and the less dense stuff moves on. So that's the theory behind it. I think we all know that, but it's a great tool for us, and we use it not just obviously me, but in all our sweeter wine products where we're arresting fermentation at the desired degree of residual sugar.
So that gives you a greater degree of precision than at which you can stop it like dead in its tracks, literally.
Yeah. Except for that would certainly be true if let's say I'm going to make a sweet wine, and so let's say for instance it's Riesling, and I want to stop it at 2% residual sugar. So centrifuge is great. In the case of me, we go to dryness because the sugar is going to be added back, right? It's going to come with that add back on the honey. So we're shooting for about 4% residual sugar in our mead, which and I honestly. Speaking without a lot of knowledge, but I would say that's probably on the less sweet side in the world of meads. It's probably, there's a lot more viscous and kind of just more traditional, big, bold, syrupy kind of meads out there. And there's dry meads as well. Haven't had a lot of those, but
there's several really good ones out there. I had 4 or 5 last week when I was in Detroit.
Was that at the conference?
No, I am actually on a round-the-country tour in my RV, my husband and I, and we're visiting various cities, and I've got a list of meaderies, 50 meaderies long, and I'm in western Michigan, but we started in North Carolina, stopped in Ohio for an overnight, and then I spent 3 days in the Detroit area, and now I'm across the state. My folks live in western Michigan. And that's where I grew up. And I'm visiting. I just got back
fantastic.
2 days downstate, and now I'm getting ready to go to the UP and then over to Iron River, Wisconsin, and then to points west and then south and then back through Arizona and New Mexico and Texas and
That's fantastic. And how long is this adventure?
About 2.5 months. We left on I think it was May 28th, and we expect to get back sometime in the middle of August.
I love it. Good for you.
Yeah, we both work from home, so, and visiting meaderies is part of my job because I'm both got mead and I'm also the executive director of the AMMA. So, for me, this is part of my work, and then my husband works from home. So we grabbed our dogs and we're just traveling the country,
Well, I could tell from your website that you're fun people, no doubt. And I'm going to have to make it to an AMA. I'm going to have to make it to a convention, one of the AMMA conventions. I'm sure that is a cast of characters, and I really find that the kind of the mead business is sort of it's got a bunch of interesting people in it, no doubt.
Oh yeah, you need to come out because it's the AMMA conference is Wednesday and Thursday, and then Friday and Saturday is the Mazer Cup International mead competition and public pour. And so we've got people coming literally from all over the world, and it's the largest mead competition in the world. Like there was close to 1,000 meads entered between home and commercial last year.
Oh, that's fantastic. Good for you.
Yeah, so it's.
So you're seeing a bright future for mead?
Oh gosh, yeah, we are at. Let me think here. When I got into the game, there were about 10 commercial meaderies, and that was, like, say, in the mid '80s. And then now at last count, there was, and this was about 3-4 weeks ago, was about 460 meaderies just in the U.S. And then I think there's like 40 or 50 in Canada, and then another 120, 130, or no, I think it's 220 outside of Canada and the United States. And then we saw on average last year in the United States, on average there was a meadery opening every 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
100 a year.
Well, I know,
yeah,
right?
It's nuts.
It's going crazy. Yeah,
exciting.
We are exploding. Yeah. And the meaderies I've been talking to are seeing growth rates from 40 to 80 or even 100% and more. So that's just in their year-to-year revenue growth rates are just stunning. So yeah, I'd say it's growing.
Well, you offer some great insight, and I'm more of a casual observer to what's going on. I got my hands on a lot more than mead, but we did the repackaging, and you've got the new look for us, and we're just thinking, isn't that it's kind of Alice in Wonderland kind of out there.
It is a bit.
We gave our. We worked with CF Napa. They're a fairly well-known package designer. They're really focused on the wine business, and gave them a lot of latitude. Gave them a creative brief that we really wanted something that was just kind of wild and take some big risks, and that showed up in the first set of areas to explore that I think they would call early design concepts. And just like, you got to be kidding me! That's it right there. Go to print.
Quick before they change everything.
I love working with those guys. Exactly, and that little frog that hangs off the side. I just like to have been in the conference room when this whole thing was going on. But and there was a hang tag. There's a hang tag that my marketing crew put together that says "Kiss the frog" and hangs on the top. And it's been fun. It really has been fun.
Like
but any more questions about the making of it? Technical things that I might be able to shed some light on?
Well, one of the questions that we always ask is, for both pros and home mead makers is, and this is usually Manny's question, but Manny's laid up. He had an accident, so he can't come to the phone right now. But he's always asking, do you ever blend yeasts?
No. No, we don't. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Yeah, I'll tell you why. And this is just purely from a biology thing. Is that if you've got they're competitive, and they don't like each other a lot. And generally, if you had 50% of one and 50% of the other, you're going to, after a couple of iterations of reproduction, you're going to have 100% of one and 0% of the other. That's generally the way it plays out.
Okay.
So if you know which one dominated the other, you can just sort of just start with that one. But our philosophy in making wines, and I'm going to throw mead in there too, is to acquire really good quality raw material. It could be blackberries, it could be grapes, it could be honey in this case, apples for cider, and we want a very minimalist winemaking protocol that preserves the flavor of that great stuff we started with.
Yeah.
In this case, honey.
Okay.
So in terms of the flavor contribution of yeast, we are, that's kind of